Hola chicos, en este video les voy a explicar la gramática de capítulo 1. I'm actually going to do the grammar for this in English because it will make more sense. So in chapter 1, these are the things that we are going to talk about. We're going to talk about interrogative words, which are just a fancy way of saying question words, exclamations, adjectives, possessive pronouns, demonstrative pronouns, and mandatos, which are commands. So those are the themes for chapter 1. You have guided notes to fill in as you do the video. So please make sure that you are filling the chapter 1 section, and we're going to start with interrogatives. And interrogatives, as you can see, are just questions in Spanish, more questions in English, but we're going to do Spanish. And right here, they're always written between two question marks, which we know. There are two types of questions: closed questions, which are yes or no questions, and questions that use interrogative words. This is the answer to your first question. All question words have an accent, even indirect questions. So please make sure that all of your question words have an accent. Yes or no questions are also known as closed questions. So right here, closed questions. Basically, it is the same exact structure as a sentence. You just put the question marks around it, and you have a couple of examples here. Open-ended questions are questions that need to be answered with more information because they contain a question word. So these are the question words, and here are some examples. But they'll always have a question word in them because you cannot answer yes or no. Common question words. So on your notes, it says, what are the 12 question words? So you're going to go with the 12 question words that I have highlighted here. So please fill in those question words. And then on the bottom, it says, what is special about cuánto? So it talks right here about qué, quién, and cuánto. So cuánto right here talks about how many or how much. And what's interesting about cuánto is it agrees in number and gender. So it can be cuánto, cuánta, cuántos, or cuántas. That's the same thing with quién. It could be quién or quiénes, and cuál can also be cuál or cuáles, so they can also go plural. So we are going to move on to expressions or exclamaciones. What are the 4 most common words to use in expressions? So basically, expressions are just using question words to form a strong feeling or opinion about something, and these are the exclamatory words. So que is your first word, como is your second word, cuán is your third word, and cuánto is your last word. And there is an example of each. So cuánto, there's an example. Cuán, you have an example. Como, you have an example. And que, you have an example. And then at the top, it says, all exclamatory words carry a written accent like interrogative words, so you can see that they'll have an accent, so that is the answer to letter G. And then you can use this list up here for examples, or the list all the way on the bottom for examples, but these are just some other exclamations that you might find helpful. And then we move to adjectives. So we're going to start at the very top. To talk about adjectives. So the main thing you have to remember in Spanish with adjectives is that they match in number and gender. That is the most important part. So they're describing words that match in number and gender. And they can be feminine, masculine, singular, or plural. So that's the answer to the first question. And then it says masculine adjectives end in, right here it talks about the ending. So o, as, it talks about adjectives that end in an e, adjectives that end in these endings, and then it gives you an example, and then adjectives that end in a consonant form. Talks about making adjectives plural right here. So the general rule with making adjectives plural is we add an S, and here are some irregularities if you end in an I or a U, and then again if you end in a Z, it will change to C. The Z will change to a C. In general, so right here it talks about the placement of adjectives. Generally, adjectives are placed after the noun. So right here, that is the important part, that they are placed after the noun. However, in certain situations, they can be placed before them, but most of the time they're after. So when would you place adjectives before the noun? So you would place adjectives before the noun if you are changing their meaning. And then you can go to this chart, and these adjectives change meaning based on the placement. So these are your 5 that you're going to put in. I'll scroll down in a minute. But antiguo, if it's placed after the noun, means old. But if it's placed before the noun, it means former. And then it gives you an example. So these 5 are the ones that you have to worry about between their placement before and after the noun. But most of the time we'll place adjectives after the noun, especially if it's a literal translation. If you want a more figurative translation, you could put it before the noun. Pronombres posesivos, so possessive pronouns is the next section. I know it says pronombres, and it says what are possessive pronouns. It should be what are possessive adjectives. I should change that. So possessive adjectives indicate possessive and belonging, and they agree in number and gender. So you have to make sure you match them. There are 2 basic forms. You have unstressed or short forms, and then you have stressed or long forms. So the first part asks about the unstressed or short forms. These are your singular pronouns, me, tu, su, nuestro, vuestro, su, and the plural just have s's on them, so they're very similar. And these are placed before the noun. So you can see nuestro perro, nuestro would go before perro, so that would be an example. Versus the possessive long forms, mio, tuyo, suyo, nuestro, vuestro, suyo. These are for singular, and then plural pretty much get the s, and you can see that they change to a here or as here. The difference with these is they go after, so amigos nuestros. So the top one, the unstressed is like saying our dog. The amigos nuestros here is like saying friends of ours. So that's the only difference. It's my dog or dog of mine. It's literally saying the exact same thing. You can use one or the other, but it's just 2 different ways of kind of doing the same thing. So those are the possessive adjectives. And the next section asked about demonstrative pronouns. So demonstrative pronouns have feminine and plural forms, so we also have to be careful about matching them. But basically, we use demonstratives to identify an animal, a person, or a thing, and its distance from the speaker. So if you see right here, my person, the closest thing would be this, farther away would be that, and then even farther away would be that over there. So that's basically what a demonstrative pronoun is saying, like this, that, or that over there. And you can kind of see that picture in your notes. And it says, what are the 3 demonstratives? So este is this. So este is this. Ese is that, a little bit farther away. And aquel would be that over there. So those are the 3 general demonstratives. But we have to remember that they need to match in number and gender. So right here it talks about este, which was that first closest to the speaker. How it can be este, esta, estos, or estas, depending on if it's masculine, feminine, masculine plural, or feminine plural. And that means this, so it's something that would be close to you. Esse would be a little bit farther, and it would be that, something that's close to the speaker but not too far away. And again, that has a masculine, feminine, masculine plural, and feminine plural form. And then when something is very far away from the speaker, you could use aquel, aquella, aquellos, and aquellas, and that means that way over there. And again, we have to match it. So this is just a chart with those demonstrative pronouns again. Este for this, esse for that, and aquel for that over there, and then the forms if they're masculine, feminine, singular, or plural. And then lastly, give an example of each demonstrative pronoun, which we talked about. I do want you to note that there is an indefinite form. If you're saying, this is so much fun, and you're referring to this as a general clause, like this part, like this event, or it's not a specific thing, it's more of a general thing, you could go with the O. So this would be esto, this would be eso. And that's more of a general, like, that was such a great idea, and that would be maybe a clause of something. It's not a specific thing. So there is a more indefinite form that you just put the O on the end of these 4. So that is it. Oh, I'm sorry. One more. Mandatos. We have mandatos, which is the last thing in this chapter. And mandatos are commands. So when do we use commands? We use commands to express demands, orders, and requests. So we should pretty much know that. There are all of these different commands, but we're just going to focus on the 2-form commands and the usted and ustedes commands. So again, right here, it tells you when we use the imperative. That's important to write down even though it's not a question. So I began with the formal commands. So I'm going to scroll down and show you how to do formal commands. So formal commands include usted and ustedes commands. And the process for forming the commands is this right here. You put the verb in the yo form, you drop the o, and you add the opposite ending. So for example, hablar in the yo would be hablo. You would drop the o, and the opposite ending would be an e for an usted form. And then for the ustedes form, it would be en because it would be plural. So the three-step process is put it in the yo, it's right here. Put it in the yo, drop the o, and add the opposite ending. What happens with irregular yo verbs? You have to be careful with verbs like tango, traigo, conozco, tango, vengo. Anything that has a go in the yo, when you put it in the yo, is going to be tango. If you drop the o, you're still going to have that tang. So you have to be careful. Anything that's irregular in the yo is going to stay irregular. What is the only difference between usted and ustedes commands? You can see here there is no n, and here there is an n. So the only difference is with ustedes commands, you add an n. And luckily, positive and negative commands are exactly the same. You can see that they're formed exactly the same way, and the only difference is that you add a no. So these are the 5 irregular commands. They're irregular because in the yo, they don't end in an o, so they can't follow our pattern. So ser is seya for usted or sean for ustedes. Ir is vaya, dar is de, estar is este, and saber is sepa. And then we add an n when these are plural. When you add an n to dar, it will drop the accent. And are there stem changing verbs? Yes, we have to worry about anything that stem changes in the present tense yo form. We have to worry about stem changing in the usted or ustedes commands. So that is usted and ustedes commands, which are much easier than the 2 form commands. So how do you form informal commands? The positive commands are formed one way, and the negative commands are formed another way. The negative commands follow the same pattern that we just did with usted form commands. Put it in the yo, right here. Put it in the yo, drop the o, add the opposite ending. So they follow the same pattern. So you would have no hables, no aprendas, and no escribas. They have the same irregulars, seya, vaya, de, este, and sepa. So they pretty much follow the exact same thing. The ones you have to worry about are these right here, the positive formal commands. They follow a completely different structure than everything else. They are the same conjugation as the third person singular of the verb. So for example, hablar in this box would be habla, and that's the same as the command form. So escribe would be the conjugation here, and that is the same in this box. So it's the same conjugation as the ella in the present tense. The other thing you have to worry about is these irregulars right here. These are the 8 irregulars that will not follow the rule. So venir goes to ven, decir goes to di, salir goes to sal, hacer goes to as, tenir goes to ten, ir goes to ve, poner goes to pon, and ser goes to se. So those are the ones you have to worry about. And then the very last question is in regard to placement of pronouns. So it shows you examples with reflexive pronouns and direct and indirect object pronouns. Basically, you can see right here in the positive form, we attach the pronouns on the end. If we attach a pronoun on the end, we count 3 vowels back, 1, 2, 3, to put an accent. In a negative command, we put the pronoun before the conjugated verb. So positive, it goes attached. Negative, it goes before. So that's the general rule with all pronouns. And here's another example on the bottom. It is worth noting that there is an alternative way to command people. You can put an a in front of the infinitive, and that is another way to kind of get the same feeling across. So if you said a correr, it's kind of like let's run or get running. And that's an easier way to do a command because there's no conjugations required. So that is everything that you need to know about commands. If you have any questions about any of this grammar, you didn't get any of the questions, please do not hesitate to ask me. I am more than happy to go over anything. If you think that you need specific practice on a topic, I would also be happy to go over that.